So today in Johnny Tremain, we're going to be reading from page 215 to page 225. That fall, Paul Revere did organize a spy system. 30 artisans, mostly masters, from all over Boston were the center. Each of these men had workmen and apprentices under him, and these had friends, and the friends had friends. So this web of eyes and ears multiplied and multiplied again, until a British soldier could hardly say he'd like to swim in Yankee blood, or a couple of befuddled young officers draw out a campaign on the tablecloth at the Afric Queen. But it was reported. It was noted exactly which regiments were on duty in different parts of Boston, and how strong were the earthworks Gage was putting up to protect his men if the country should rush in. All such news, important and trivial, was carried to the 30 meeting secretly at the Green Dragon. It had caused comment that so many leading Whigs had been seen ever and anon converging upon the observer's office. It aroused no comment that 30 men of humbler rank, master workmen, like Paul Revere, the silversmith, Thomas Crafts, the painter, or Chase, the distiller, met at the Green Dragon. This old stone inn was owned by the Masons. Most of these men were Masons, so why should they not meet in the proverbial secrecy of their society? Every time they met, each man swore upon the Bible that these meetings be kept secret, that anything they discovered of British plans should be told only to the 4 men who were looked upon as the leaders of the Boston Whigs. These were Sam Adams, John Hancock, Dr. Warren, and Dr. Church. Already, many others had thought it safer to leave Boston. Anything Johnny picked up, he usually reported to Paul Revere, but sometimes to Dr. Warren. He had been assigned his own particular duty. This was to keep sharp track of Colonel Smith and the other officers of the 10th Regiment who were living at the Afric Queen. As long as Goblin was stabled there, no one was suspicious if Johnny hung about the stables, the yard, and the kitchen. He was on good terms with the British grooms, and by great good luck, from the point of view of a spy system, intimate with the Colonel's horseboy, Dove. "Don't you lose track of that Dove, Johnny," Paul Revere commanded him, "for if ever the British march out to attack us, our Colonel's horseboy might well know something is happening in advance." Every day Johnny knew what orders were given to the 10th, and he knew other boys and men and women and girls were as carefully watching the actions of the other 10 regiments in Boston. Lydia, the handsome black laundress at the Queen, extended his own eyes and ears into the very bedrooms of the officers, and often, as he helped her hang up sheets, she would tell him this and that, but nothing of any value, until one day she called him out of the stable where he was grooming Goblin. "Johnny boy," she called, "you help me hang up these here sheets, and I'll give you a sweet." "What's up?" he whispered as soon as he had helped carry out the heavy basket of wash. "Last night, just before bedtime, Colonel Smith, he sent for me, 'cause he says I sent up a shirt as it wasn't his. And dat dere Lieutenant Stranger, he was standing by der fireplace thanking his colonel for permission to go on de little business. He was looking real happy, like young folks do as have been allowed to attend a party. But a little business might be anything. Yes, but Stranger, he likes fighting real good. He ain't no cardboard soldier like some of these British boys." And he whistled happy as a robin as he went to his own room. And he sat for an hour or more writing letters and tearing 'em up and writing 'em again. And this morning he sent one off to Miss Lavinia Light by Dove. But these scraps of paper I got in my pocket are his trials and errors. I can't read, and he did tear 'em up, but here they are. Lydia, give me your pocket." She unpinned the little calico bag from her waistband. Johnny stuffed it inside his jacket and ran back to the printing office. It took no time to put together 2 letters which Stranger had written and discarded. First, he had written Miss Lavinia. Johnny knew he was dancing attendance on her. A rude note bluntly declining her invitation to a frolic which on the 15th of December would follow a military concert. Today was the 12th. "Evidently," said Rab, "he explained too little in his first letter and too much in his next, so he tore them both up and tried a 3rd time." Rab, Mr. Lorne, and Johnny all had their heads over the drawing board where the second letter was pieced together and spread out. The first part was missing, and he had never finished it. "As Lovelace said so long ago, I cannot love thee, dear, so much as so much loved I not honor more. 'Tis honor only, my dear, very dear Miss Light, which forces me to decline your most gracious invitation for the 15th of December. The honor of a soldier and eyes, even brighter than your brilliant orbs, the bright eyes of danger call me forth. To you alone I will confide that on that night I shall be 60 miles north of here, for we must have all our forts sufficiently strengthened so as—" Then he stopped. 60 miles, said Mr. Lorne. That's Portsmouth, Fort William and Mary. They have only had a handful of men on duty there and a vast store of powder and ball. No wonder, Rab was saying. Stranger tore that letter up. It certainly let the cat out of the bag. Where are you off to, Johnny? I'm off to Paul Revere, Johnny yelled over his shoulder. He had not stopped for overcoat or mittens. From the lowering December sky, handfuls of snowflakes were falling, but as soon as they came to earth, they turned to ice. It was a bleak, bad, dangerous day for the long ride north. 10 minutes after Johnny told him the news, Revere was in the saddle, buttoning his fur-lined surtout to his ears. His wife had so recently borne him another child she was still abed. She rapped on a window pane, and Johnny ran to her. He forgot this, she said, and handed him the hasty scrawl she had had the wit to write, meaning that she had had the idea to write. In it, Paul Revere was begged by a make-believe relative in Ipswich to come in all haste. His grandmother was on her deathbed. Johnny had to laugh. The British soldiers at the neck were asking more and more questions of any known Whig, and sometimes, for a whim, would refuse to let him pass and often again delay the trip. Mrs. Revere's letter would allay their suspicions. So at this point, whenever they're trying to go in and out of Boston, they have to lie sometimes because the Boston soldiers are stopping so many people, and especially the Whigs, not letting them in and out because they're afraid that they're spreading messages like what Paul Revere's about to do. And so Paul Revere's wife wrote him a fake letter saying that basically he had to leave Boston because his grandmother was ill. That night, over icy roads and through howling winds, Paul Revere rode the 60 miles. Even before the British got into their transports, word had come back to Boston that the King's Fort at Portsmouth had been seized and His Majesty's military stores stolen by the rebellious Americans. Scylla reported to Johnny that Lieutenant Stranger did, indeed, attend Miss Lavinia's handsome frolic, and a more gloomy young man she had never seen. Even in the old days of the Lapham shop, Dove would have been Johnny's friend if Johnny would have had it. The enmity between them was the younger and smarter boy's fault. As soon as Johnny began to cultivate Dove, he was surprised at the response. Dove had always been lonely, and he still was. The Yankee boys threw bad words and oyster shells at him because he worked for the British. The British horse boys badgered him. Lieutenant Stranger thought he was the stupidest, laziest pig he had ever met, and told him so at least once a day. Colonel Smith was not above knocking him down if his horses were ill cared for. But Johnny's feelings towards Dove had changed. Dove was garrulous, indolent, complaining, and boastful, but it hurt Johnny when the other boys bullied him and his masters beat him. He was like a man who owns a dull, mean dog. He may punish it himself, but resents it if anyone else punishes it. For better or worse, Dove was now his own private property. Once a day, twice a day, and sometimes 3 times in one day, Dove would sneak over to the observer's office. Here, for a few minutes, he could get away from the swearing and cuffing of his superiors and the malice of the grooms. By Rab and Johnny's standards, they were often rude to him. By his own, they treated him fine. At least he was allowed to slump into a chair, complain, boast, and eat. It was hard to watch Dove swilling their meager food, but the way to his heart seemed to be through his stomach. What they had shared with him, or what they had, they shared with him. Whew. Although badly treated by the British and kindly by the 2 Yankee boys, Dove had become violently pro-British, at least when talking to Rab and Johnny. He considered himself part of the British Army and was always bragging about what we were going to do to the rebels. Yep, we're going to march right out of here, he was saying one day, and we'll kill every rebel we meet, skin them, cut off their heads. And here in Boston, just as soon as old Gage gives the signal, we're going to string up every rebel. Hundreds of them. Yep. Johnny yawned. He could not help it. The yawn may have irritated his guest. Oh, they know all about you. You haven't been given any writing to do for them of late, have you? True enough, although Johnny had not found out one thing of genuine value by the letter carrying he had done for British officers, it had been a good contact and he needed money. He had been sorry to find that he was no longer employed. It was that I warned him. I told him that Johnny Tremain was a rebel of the deepest double dye. So Dove had gone out of his way, had he, to be mean? Oh, you, blat, 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 talk, talk, talk. I know what's my duty to report and what's my duty to keep mum about. Take military secrets. I don't tell them. As soon as he had arrived, he had walked over to the cupboard where the boys kept their food and helped himself. As he talked, the crumbs came dribbling out of the corner of his loose mouth. For instance, he went on, you didn't know, did you, that last December Lieutenant Stranger almost went on an expedition to Portsmouth? I knew he was planning to go, but I knew enough not to say anything to you about it. I can keep a secret, all right. Thanks to Lydia, they had known about this, but they had had no idea that Dove, too, had known at the time. That's no secret now, but it is a secret where old Gage will strike next. You'd like to know, wouldn't you? I could tell if I had the mind to. Why don't you give me something to drink? Rab and Johnny exchanged a glance. Johnny poured him a tankard of ale. Maybe he knew more than they thought, but would the mild ale loosen his tongue? You wait a moment, Dove. I'll be right back. Johnny ran through the backyard to the Afric Queen. He knew Colonel Smith had told Lydia that one of his young gentlemen was prone to solitary tippling. If ever she found a bottle of brandy in his chamber, she was to take it. He did not say where she was to take it to. Lydia took away the young gentleman's bottle in the morning when she made his bed, but was not above reselling it to him in the evening. Johnny came back, a brandy bottle in his hand. Now this, he promised, will pick up that flat ale something fine. He poured in so generous an amount that Dove's white lashes quivered with anticipation. You certainly are a good guy. My, that's great. That's the stuff. Well, as I was saying, here it is, March. That's spring. Armies don't stay cooped up in springtime. They march out and fight. He hiccuped for the first time. Fight battles, and the battle we are going to fight. Fight this springtime. Me and the rest of the boys. Well, I warn you, if I was you, I'd not wait. I'd start running and not stop until I came to the Berkshires. I don't believe they'll move the army all the way out to the Berkshires. Who said anything about the army going to the Berkshires? There are no military stores there. And Keynes commanded old Grandma Gage to confiscate all rebel stores. His Majesty is real mad. Got his royal dander up. He thinks Gage is scared because he don't take action against the rebellion. So at this point, Dove is starting to get a little drunk. Gage already had 3 times to seize our supplies. Charlestown, Salem, and Portsmouth. Once he did, and twice we were too quick for him. He doesn't know where our things are hidden. Don't he? Don't he? Johnny filled his tankard again with the horrifying concoction. Dove belched with satisfaction. They've got maps and map cases. They've got Worcester and Concord marked in red. They know where to go, all right. Don't you wish you knew just how many active troops there are in Boston now? How many? Dove's figure was wildly inaccurate. It looked as though they had wasted their ale in Lydia's brandy. Dove was getting maudlin. There were tears in his eyes as he told them how much he loved them. Best friends ever had, he mumbled. Best boys in the world. And suddenly struck out at the British. They're mean guys, he cried angrily. I'm going to the Berkshires with you two. I'm not a-going to stay here in Boston nursemaiding them there horses. Dig a hole, get in hole. Pull hole in after me. Keep safe till war's over. Boys, boys, he cried in alcoholic despair. You come with me. I can't stand for you to hang. I can't. And he burst into tears. Pull yourself together, Rab ordered sternly. He was less easygoing about some things than Johnny. Sure, I'll pull right out of here. He got unsteadily to his feet. I'm going to tell that stranger I quit. Going to throw a currycomb in Colonel Swish's fash. I'm going to... Oh, hold on there. No, you're not, Dove, said Rab, blocking the door. You're going to sit down, see, and cool off. It would never do to let Dove return to the inn in such a state. He'd get fired. The boys had overcooked their own goose. It took them half an hour to quiet Dove. Over and over, they explained to him what a fine job he had and what a glory it was to be a part of the British Army. Finally, Dove began to subside. He was getting sleepy. Well, it don't make any difference. I'll get fired anyhow. Stranger told me that the colonel's horses all shined up good. Told me get Nan around saddled by 4-something, maybe by 4:30. He leaned back and slept. Looks like I'll have to do his work for him, muttered Johnny. We can't let him get fired. It's 4 now. Oh, that swill paid that louse. He ran for the stable. Before this, he had often helped Dove with his work. The colonel had 2 horses. the heavy yellow charger called Sandy he had brought with him from England, and the light pacing mare Lieutenant Stranger had picked out for him after he had decided Goblin wouldn't suit. Nan, the second horse, had easier gaits than the old war horse. The colonel much preferred her for hacking about Boston, but she was not well trained for drums and volleys. The colonel, a poor horseman, never risked his dignity on her when he went out with his troops. Then he rode Sandy. Nan was beautiful and affectionate. Sandy, sweet-tempered, old, and wise. Johnny liked them both. As Dove slept, Johnny worked and whistled. At 4:30, he had Nan saddled and led her to the mounting block in front of the inn. The fat colonel could not mount or dismount from the ground. "Take her back, boy," Lieutenant Stranger told him. "Colonel Smith is bilious." Then he noticed it was Johnny, not Dove, and his handsome face brightened. He asked no questions. "Look you," he said. "Run, fetch your horse, and I'll take Nan. I want to show you how to jump." Stranger had already told him of the hurdles at the foot of the common. Johnny had wistfully watched red-coated officers schooling their horses over them. He had not dared try them himself. He was afraid they would order him away. But no one would order away any friend Stranger cared to bring with him. Although the very young officer was proud and class-conscious enough when they met indoors at the lights or after Queen, once both were in their saddles, they were equals. He was an ardent teacher who had at last met a pupil worth bothering with. Or, rather, two pupils, for at the end of the first lesson he said Goblin was the finest natural jumper he had ever seen. Johnny knew he longed to own him himself. He could, any moment, by merely saying, "Commandeer," and Johnny knew he never would say it. From that day, he and Johnny spent hours together jumping or exercising horses. Johnny almost worshipped him for his skill and almost loved him because ever and anon he looked so much like Rab, but still it was only where horses were concerned they were equals. Indoors he was rigidly a British officer and a gentleman, and Johnny an inferior. This shifting about puzzled Johnny. It did not seem to puzzle the British officer at all.